So the Medicaid hearings got most of the headlines yesterday, but not all of the headlines. So to set this up, we just want to take a very, very brief trip down memory lane. Remember when Donald Trump held this picture up of Kilmar Abrego Garcia's fingers with the clearly photoshopped MS-13 above the tattoos, marijuana leaf, smile, the cross, and the skull. Now, obviously, these were put there as a key to try and signify what those tattoos meant as symbols. They were not meant to be taken literally as being on his hands. And by the way, it's been recently going around online, credibly, I feel. Some tattoo artists have been posting on social media that actually what those symbols mean is smoke weed to get high, praise God till you die.
That makes sense.
Marijuana, smile,
makes a lot
cross.
more sense than MS-13.
Yeah. Now, can we verify that? No, but it makes actually a hell of a lot more sense than MS-13 since A, MS-13 gang members typically have MS-13 on their bodies. They're not subtle about it. And B, the cross and the skull never made sense. Like marijuana, smile, okay. If you're going to be cryptic, okay. The cross and the skull never made sense that would be 13. But just to give you a sort of humorous recap, Trump so incredibly, and seemingly sincerely believed that those were not photoshopped. So here is a little short we made of our live reaction to this train wreck segment on ABC News.
Agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
You want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture. We'll
You think it was Photoshop?
Well, here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine.
No,
I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted.
Okay, so yeah, that was one of the cringiest things to watch. It was one of the most unbelievable pieces of video that I've ever seen. In the history of generating this kind of content.
We don't do the reaction thumbnails, but that was a case where we should have.
It could have.
You doing this on the thumbnail would have really sold that clip.
That's true. We should have. We should just take some stills of standard reactions that we can plug in.
That's what they do.
Yeah, just have a stock. Yeah, book a photo session. All right. So what do you need? Well, I just need some reactions of me looking like this,
looking horrified.
Yeah, I need like 30. Yeah. So that was pretty unbelievable, but so is this. I mean, I have to say, this is extraordinary. So Secretary Ducklips, Kristi Noem, was testifying yesterday at a lesser publicized hearing. But here she is being confronted with this photograph by Congressman Eric Swalwell, and she refuses to acknowledge that Trump brandished a doctored image of Abrego Garcia's tattoo. This is incredible.
You have an important job. I think you have one of the most important jobs in the cabinet. Thank you for doing it. I want you to have credibility and be taken seriously as you do the job. And so I want to put to rest this question about Mr. Garcia and this photo that the president posted on April 21. Madam Secretary, you agree that the letters MS and the number 13 in Times Roman numeral font, that they are doctored on this photo, right?
Congressman Abrego Garcia.
No, I'm just asking about this photo.
It wasn't based off of tattoos. It was based off an entire case.
And I'll accept that
case against him.
For the purpose of this question. You agree, though, that this is doctored. Is that right?
The same protocols that are
Madam
applied
Secretary,
to every
I want you to have
with
credibility,
law
and
enforcement.
I want you to be taken seriously. Is this doctored or is it not
Sir,
doctored?
I am taken quite seriously.
Is it
because I
doctored
approach
or
my
not
job
doctored?
With the importance that the president has given me to do
I understand.
my job.
Is it doctored or not
Something
doctored?
that's important to.
Funny how, Kristi Noem looks like a 22-year-old but has the voice of an 82-year-old. She sounds like a little old lady. I take this very seriously.
I mean, she doesn't look like a 22-year-old. She looks like what she is, a middle-aged woman with a lot of lip fillers and Botox. And
I think she pulls it off. Yeah. But anyway, we'll settle that a different time.
Remembers that every single time a case is built.
Madam Secretary, I have a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. I have a bullshit detector. I'm just asking you, is this doctored or not doctored?
Sir, the protocols in the case built against
Can you
Abrego
answer the
Garcia
question?
were exactly the same.
Madam Secretary,
I don't have any knowledge as to that photo you're pointing to.
Okay, can you take
I don't, sir.
She has no knowledge of the photo that you're referring to. Really? No knowledge of that? You went down to
Never
CCON.
heard of it.
You went down to CCON and made a big show of these deportations, you are the Secretary of Homeland Security, and you have not seen this photo before? That is, of course, an unbelievably transparent lie.
Show her the photo. Walk her the photo down there. No, that one. Please take a look at this photo. It was tweeted by the president on April 21. It's been hanging out there for about a month.
So what is your point?
My question is the numbers.
The point is the president showed doctored evidence and then refused to admit that it was doctored. Now, I have a feeling he is such a boomer that he sincerely believes that that is not a doctored image. But you're not a boomer. You have the social media savvy to get dolled up with a hair curler and 3 layers of makeup and pinkish purple lipstick before you tour a torture prison. So you're the kind of person who ought to be savvy enough to recognize Photoshop where it clearly exists. So will you answer the question? Let's see.
And the letter, MS-13. Could you look at the photo, please? It's right in front of
Are
you.
you saying Abrego Garcia is not a wife beater?
No,
No,
ma'am.
he's saying the evidence is doctored. The evidence that you are using to put a man in a torture prison, which thankfully, thanks to Chris Van Hollen, he's been moved out of the torture prison, but he's still in jail based on very shoddy doctored evidence. That's what this is about. That's what he's saying.
He's not a criminal.
Ma'am,
He's not a human trafficker. And
ma'am,
he's not a member of MS.
You vouched for Mr. Garcia when
You're
your team
vouching for
said,
a man
ma'am, you
that
vouched
is a
for him when
known
you said he
violent
was
criminal.
mistakenly deported.
Sir,
I didn't vouch for him.
I did not say
In that
He
photo,
should have been deported. Absolutely.
It's so
There was
telling
never a
that you
mistake
won't look at the
deporting,
photo.
And we will not be bringing
Was
him
it
back to
doctored
at
or
it.
not?
In staying here, if
Can you
he
look
comes
to
back
your
the
right
country, he
at
would
the
be
photo in
deported
front
right
of you?
away.
Madam Secretary, can you look to the right at the photo in front of you?
I have seen this
Okay.
photo as you.
You just said you were not familiar with the photo. Now you're saying you've seen the photo, and she refuses to even turn her head to
Well,
look at
I
it.
mean, that could be the Botox.
Held it behind your heads.
Thank you. And the letters MS and the numbers 13, are those
Is
doctored
this your
or
entire
not?
testimony today is on a doctored photo? You don't want to talk about the facts?
Okay,
The
so
importance of our national security?
there
You
go.
acknowledge it was
do
doctored.
to make sure that the United States is protected.
Madam Secretary,
from
this is not a hard
violent
question.
criminals?
Are those doctored or not?
Sir,
Is that actually on his hand or not?
This is unbelievable to me that you're focused.
It's
on
unbelievable
a
to me
photo
that you can't
think-
look at the photo and tell the
I
American
looked at
people.
the photo, but I don't have any knowledge as to this photo.
Okay, so it's been hanging out there for 4 weeks. You are one of the chief law enforcement officials in the country. What have you done to investigate whether the president misrepresented the reason that that person has been detained?
Sir,
have
we
you
spend our
done
time-
anything to try and figure out whether that was doctored or not?
The mission of the Department of Homeland Security is to secure our nation and to make sure that we're out there going after those that are the worst of the worst, the criminals, the bad actors. Abrego Garcia,
So the answer is
The
you've done
known
nothing to
terrorist,
correct the
service
president.
animals.
MS-13, a wife beater and a human trafficker that should never have been in this country to begin with.
So, Madam Secretary,
Okay, we did a segment, we've done several segments on the Abrego Garcia case, which, like the Mahmoud Khalil case, is indicative of just how crazed and sociopathic these people are. That they would condemn a person potentially to a life sentence in a torture prison in a foreign country, defy a unanimous Supreme Court ruling to facilitate his return, and then obfuscate and refuse to even, it's worse than obfuscation, refuse to engage on the question of whether or not he is there based on doctored evidence. What do you think these people will not do to you? This is why I don't have patience for people. Well, we got to give Trump credit on this. No, no. These are automatic fails. You lock a man in prison who's here on a green card for criticizing Israel. That's an automatic fail. I don't want to hear about all the good deeds you've done in other sectors. By the way, there aren't many. Okay? This is another automatic fail. You're locking a man in an overseas prison based on shoddy evidence, and you refuse to even engage on the question of whether or not that evidence is valid. That's an automatic fail. The evaluation of this administration begins and ends in moments like these. If you don't see this for what it is, your eyes are not open. So here's Dan Goldman. You have anything to add? Well, this is quick. Do you want to play this? And then we'll...
Just play that. No.
Okay, cool. All right, so here's Dan Goldman. Will you give Abrego Garcia the due process the Supreme Court has required you to give him?
Filibustering.
Surrounded by gang members of MS-13.
Will you give Mr. Abrego Garcia the due process that the Supreme Court and Judge Wilkinson has required you to give him.
Diego Garcia is an El Salvador resident who is in his home country. If he were to come back to this country, he would be immediately removed again.
How do you know?
He has received and been treated appropriately,
So
sir, and he is not.
How can you say he's been treated appropriately if the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0? 9-0 that he hasn't been treated appropriately. Why is your opinion better and have more authority than the Supreme Court?
Investigators, 2 judges, an immigration court that all said he was MS-13 and was removed from this country.
But you understand, that is you saying that. That is you saying that.
That is them saying that. This
No.
is investigators and law
That is
enforcement
you
officers.
making.
And that opinion was nullified by an order of stay. That was already litigated and found to be inconclusive. Now, if you have more conclusive evidence, bring him here, show it to him, and show it to a judge. And if you're right, you're right. This is not about protecting one man. This is about protecting everyone in this country by setting a precedent that due process will not be suspended.
That determination against him. If you don't
The
trust our law
court
enforcement
has considered all that. The judge has considered all that, Madam Secretary. And if you would be quiet, because I'm reclaiming my time.
Unbelievable.
You are not following this court order. But let's focus on the court order, because this opinion also says that to facilitate, which the Supreme Court is requiring, is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia to allow him to get due process?
Abrego Garcia is in his home country.
What steps have you taken?
If your continued advocacy for him were to...
I'm not advocating for him. I'm advocating for a court order, Madam Secretary. The court order says that you must take steps to follow the court order. You are here under oath. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia pursuant to this court order?
It's got to be extremely discouraging to be one of your constituents. To see you fight for a terrorist like this and not fight for them is extremely alarming to me.
I'm fighting for due process. And that's under the...
Audible groans at the suggestion that this is disheartening to your constituents. Audible groan. Why? Luckily, we have recent polling on this. No, actually, it is you, Kristi Noem, who is out of step with the constituency of this country. The case involving Kilmar Abrego Garcia, New York Times Siena poll, 52% disapprove. Only 31% approve of the handling of this case. More Americans say Trump should bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back to the U.S. than say he should not, by a very, very wide margin. 50% say he should be brought back, 22% unsure, only 28% say no, he should not be brought back. With independents, you're underwater by 27 points. Again, when you are losing this bad with independents, that's how you know you have lost the plot. Among Republicans, only 54% say he shouldn't be brought back. 17% say he should, 29% unsure. So it's almost a split within your own party. And even amongst people who think that, you know what, maybe he belongs in El Salvador, when you ask the question, hey, if the court orders him back, do you have an obligation to follow the court? Well, at that point, the numbers just become incredibly lopsided. 78% says Trump has an obligation to follow the court's ruling. 19% say that he does not have an obligation to follow the court's ruling. However, when you reframe that and say, well, if the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, orders it, what are the numbers at that point? At that point, only 9% of the population feel that Donald Trump should defy a Supreme Court order. So it is not Dan Goldman who is out of step with the voters on this issue. It is Donald Trump and Kristi Noem who are out of step with the voters on this issue. To see someone in that position of power be so incorrigible at the mention of a clear abuse of the system is really chilling. It's really chilling. That is really amazing video.
Hey, these people shouldn't be able to run a card game, much less these large institutions that have such an enormous impact on people's lives. Like what kind of a psychopath takes joy in deporting somebody to a torture prison that they admitted was deported by mistake. Now, these people are relentless in staying on message, and that's what they're going to do. They are just going to keep saying, you're advocating for a terrorist, for a human trafficker, because the audience that they're speaking to is their core base. And, we interact with them and encounter them quite frequently. Those are the ones who will say, skeptically, so the Maryland man is just a good father, right? I mean, it's the Foxification, MSNBCification of politics, where you're just talking to a fanatical core, even if they don't represent most people, because that fanatical core, that's your base. Those are your voters. Those are your foot soldiers. That's your army. And you hope that through them, you can recruit more at election time. But really, who is this for? That's why they don't care about those polls. Why, you think they don't see those polls? They're not talking to the majority of the public. They're talking to this MAGA core.
Yeah, and in this case, they had the public on their side more broadly on this issue, on the question of immigration, border security, deportations, and now they don't. And the reason you don't is because you took the goodwill that people handed you and you abused it in such egregious fashion that now even the MAGA hardliners say, listen, if the Supreme Court rules a certain way, you have to abide by it. Only a third of the MAGA base says no, fuck the Supreme Court. That's how you know you've really screwed yourself.
Well, and also, actually, when you look at broad polling on matters like Medicaid, like deportation, in spite of what you might think from the most visible parts of this conversation, most people are not deranged psychopaths nor unhinged identitarians who refuse to admit that there could be any issues with mass immigration that are not motivated by racism. Most people don't think like this. Most people are not like this. Our politics, I am increasingly of the belief, based on the evidence, our politics, our conversation, particularly derived from social media, it's an op, man. It's an op. I think you have intelligence services behind it who want to define the conversation in terms of you either believe Abrego Garcia is Scarface on steroids and we've been rescued from him, or you believe that there could be absolutely no motivation to have any skepticism about mass migration other than bigotry. And they pretend that that's the only conversation. And when you look at that polling number, most people are not that. Most people are reasonable if you just ask them straight out, well, do you think a Supreme Court order should be defied? No, most people don't.
Right. Exactly.
Please clap.